Guess who's back?
Welcome to We Don't Have Cookies with your host, Jason Marshall.
Hey everybody, thanks for downloading the show. It's been a few months. When the pandemic first hit, they made it seem like at least half of us were going to die. So I figured I'd better spend time with my family while I could. Then the U.S. just dove into chaos from the pandemic and social issues. It's been a depressing time, and to be completely honest, I just didn't even feel like trying to do the show. But I knew I wasn't going to stay away forever. So many of you sent messages and emails. Really appreciate that. This is the 5th anniversary of We Don't Have Cookies. I had so many episodes planned before the podcast took a break, but I couldn't let the anniversary pass without bringing the show back. This is probably going to be a quick episode while I get into the groove of things. It's a little last minute, but I wanted to make sure this didn't pass us by. And if this is your first time listening to the podcast, go back and listen to some of the older episodes from earlier in the year or late last year to get a vibe of the show. This is going to be a little different than a normal episode. A lot has happened in the past few months. My kid had a birthday, and I made up a new version of the traditional happy birthday song for her. As soon as I saw her, I started singing Happy Birthday and Bonjour, Happy Birthday and Bonjour, Happy Birthday and Buongiorno, Happy Birthday and Bonjour. It's pretty stupid. I just thought of it a few minutes before she woke up. That's how shitty this year has been. Singing that song is a highlight I thought I'd tell you about. Most of you have heard the episodes where I talk about some of the paranormal stuff that has happened in the house. Well, the ghost has texted me again last week. I was on my couch texting with my wife. She sent me a picture of a cat she wanted, but the picture wouldn't come through on my phone. I kept refreshing to try to get the picture to come through. Then a message from myself came up on the screen that says, I'm fuming. Shit you not. I showed the text chain to my wife. She showed me hers, and I was the only one whose phone had that message show up. And it was even marked as read on my side as if she received it. So that's pretty odd. I'm trying to get some things going, and hopefully for the Halloween episode, we'll get to the bottom of that. I've kept myself really, really busy while I was away. Longtime listeners remember what I referred to as the treepocalypse last year. That's where I bought a ton of trees and planted them, cut down a heck of a lot more. And this year I did it again. Treepocalypse 2020 has been epic. I cleared out about an acre of land in my backyard and had some huge trees cut down around my house. So far, I have bought 92 trees, 13 berries, 2 grapevines, and a bush. Just under half of those trees are privacy trees. The rest were mostly ornamental flowering trees or trees that have really nice color in the fall. I did buy a pear tree that has pears that taste like pineapples. I thought that was pretty interesting. One of my favorite listeners, Chris Doyle, who has kept in touch during the break, had a great idea for me to let listeners sponsor a tree in my yard for a few bucks. It was such a good idea that I came up with it last year. He got 3 trees for his kids. Much appreciated, Chris. I send him pictures of his trees every few weeks so he can stay up to date on them. If you are interested in owning a piece of Marshall Manor, let me know. Send me an email, jason@wedon'thavecookies.com. You can also send me an email about anything else too. I love talking to people who listen to the podcast. You can also call 929-266-WDHC. That's 929-266-9342 and leave a voicemail and I'll play it on the show. I don't have any guests lined up for today's episode, so I figured I'd do something a little different. On normal episodes, I do a thing called a question from my last guest, where my last guest leaves a question for me to ask my next guest without my last guest knowing who my next guest will be. Since I don't have a guest today, I will be answering those questions from those guests on this episode. First up is one of the guests who has been on the podcast since the very first year of the show, comedian Mike Canistero.
Why are we going to the moon again?
My only guess is Neil Armstrong forgot his wallet, and the only way we can put his soul to rest is to go retrieve it and put it in the Smithsonian. The next question is from one of my favorite people, comedian Nicole Tran.
Who told you about the birds and the bees?
I grew up in the middle of nowhere with Christian parents, so I figured it out myself. The next question is from my friend and reality TV star, Elena Davies.
So my question is something that I've been thinking about a lot lately myself and pondering of other people, but never have asked, and I don't know why. But I'm curious to know what your favorite American accent is, United States. Maybe we could include like the southern border of Canada because it's close enough. Versus your least favorite.
This question feels like it's going to get me in trouble with at least one of you out there. I'd have to say my favorite American accent would be a Southern accent because I spent a lot of time in the South visiting my family growing up. My least favorite, this is where at least one of you is probably going to be mad at me. I guess it would be a New York or Northern accent. I can't really think of any accents in the U.S. besides Southern and Northern ones, so if there's only two choices, that would be how it falls with me. The next question is from one of my favorite comedians ever, and I can't wait to have her back on the show soon. You may have seen her on Last Comic Standing or America's Got Talent. It's Andy Erickson.
How do you feel about stuffed animals? And if you have any, what are their names?
I think we should stuff all the animals so none of them go extinct. The next question is from frequent guest, veteran comedian Darren Carter from the Pocket Party Podcast.
All right, you have a choice. 100 push-ups and 100 sit-ups, or 200 push-ups and 200 sit-ups, or 15 minutes of stretching. You have to do it Monday through Friday, Christmas week. What is your choice? 100, 200, or 15 minutes of stretching?
I'm not going to lie. I love Darren, but those all seem like shitty choices to me. I don't see how doing more push-ups and sit-ups, especially when you double the amount, makes it any better. So I'm going with 15 minutes of stretching. I was involved in martial arts for a few years, and I was always told it's more important to be flexible than strong, because you can always work around strength, but you can't work around lack of movement. So going with the 15 minutes of stretching. The next question is from the oldest guest I've ever had on the podcast, 82-year-old comedian Pat Griffin.
How do you talk yourself out of being hard on yourself?
Simple answer, I don't. I'm pretty hard on myself. Life would probably be a lot easier if I wasn't, but that's just how I am. Next up is my friend and UFC Hall of Famer, Dan the Beast Severn.
If you could, indeed, go back in time and do just one thing different, what would that one thing be?
That is a really heavy question. I guess it would be when I started 5th grade. There was a kid who rode my bus, and I started being friends with him, and he was a really bad kid, and I was a goody two-shoes kid at the time. And I think if I would have stuck to the friends that I had the year before that, I wouldn't have gotten nearly as much trouble or slacked off in school as much. So, I'd say it would probably be that. The next question is from former White House Director of Communications, Anthony Scaramucci.
What is the most embarrassing thing that has happened to you that nobody knows about?
There's a reason nobody knows about it, Anthony, and that kind of question is why Trump fired you so quickly, and I'm not answering it. Next up is one of the podcast listeners' favorite members of the We Don't Have Cookies family, John the Songman.
When it comes to like a movie character or say with a TV character from a series, who do you say you represent as a character that is kind of like you? That person represents me almost as a character, that who I am in real life.
I just started watching Curb Your Enthusiasm on HBO Max. Just the other day, there was an episode where Larry David was at a party on a beach. He brought a jacket with him, but left it in his car. Him and his wife had this big discussion over whether he should bring it, which me and my wife had going somewhere. And later he went to go get it out of his car when he was cold and it wasn't there. Then he saw a woman at the party wearing it. He went up to her to get it back. And that particular episode, that particular moment is when I realized that I basically am Larry David. So that is my answer. The next question is from DC comedian Martin Phillips.
What their favorite cheese is?
My favorite cheese is pepper jack. I like spicy food, and pepper jack goes with just about anything. The next question is from a comedian who was a guest on the very first episode of the podcast, Gary Henry.
If we were to colonize Mars and you had a chance to go, what's the first thing you're bringing with you?
The first thing I would bring is my phone so I could take pictures and videos to show my friends and family when I get back to Earth. And that brings us to the next question from another guest who has been on since the very first year of the show, comedian Mike Morris.
If you can play any sport against any athlete or famous person in the world, what sport would that be and who would it be?
The sport would be wrestling with 3 rounds that are mandatory 30 minutes, and the person would be Chrissy Teigen. The last question is from somebody we already heard from. She loves to talk, so it's fitting. It's my friend Elena.
I really need to know what your favorite go-to order from Taco Bell is. This is extremely important.
Fiesta potatoes is a must, then a tostada and pinos and cheese. I usually have some tacos or whatever else, but those 3 are always in the order no matter what. Elena was on the reality show Big Brother. This season of Big Brother starts on Wednesday. It's Big Brother All-Stars. I'm really looking forward to that. If you are too, let me know what you think of the premiere this week. I just started working for one of the house guests who was on last season. Her name is Kat Dunn. She's hilarious. I'm hoping she'll be on soon. You're going to love her. I also want to have Kevin Schlehuber back on again. That guy has so many good stories. But I cut the cord recently and got rid of cable, so I got to get the CBS All Access app soon so I can watch. I don't miss cable at all, to be honest with you. I thought that I would, but we have Netflix, Hulu, HBO Max, Disney T, Sling, and Amazon Prime, and it feels like I have more to watch now than I did when I had cable. Plus, Spectrum was charging us over $200 a month, and that's ridiculous. But the reason I brought that up is that on all those apps, they let you have a few different user accounts. My wife has one, I have one, and both our kids have one. The wife and kids use their names for their accounts, which I say most people do, but I named my account JMoneyXL. I did it just to mess with them, but a couple of weeks ago, I had a friend over and I wanted to show him something on one of the apps, and I started to log in and he was like, JMoneyXL. I'd gotten so used to it that I didn't even think about it. Gotta admit, I felt kind of stupid. Well, this was a different kind of episode. a little last minute, but next week I will be back with a regular episode and the return of the podcast official weatherman and YouTube sensation, Frankie McDonald. But before I go, I want to thank everybody who has stuck with the show despite it being off for a few months. I really appreciate that. At the end of every episode, I always put a quick, funny clip that's out of context at the end of the music as a way of thanking people for listening all the way through. Instead of playing the outro music today, I'm going to end things with a montage of those clips. It's shorter than it has been in previous years, but hopefully it will be much longer for the 6th anniversary episode. Thanks for listening. I'll talk to you next Monday. If you do, good for you. I just wanted you guys to think I was cool and that I knew a magic trick.
Himalaya?
Everything you're asking there is completely ridiculous.
Mailboxes?
Pumpkins are kind of dumb if you think about it.
Oh, we go to the moon for jobs.
Batten down your hatches. I don't believe you.
You apologize. You've never felt more alive than when the President of the United States is calling you an unstable nut job.
Let me have it.
That's why you have a podcast, because of us.
My book is awesome. Really, to be just being happy National Weather Person Day.
Have you ever pooped in a car?
That is the funniest thing ever.
I'm good to you guys now.